Good morning, ladies. Welcome to the 4th annual She Summit, Superhero Engine Summit. I want to thank GatherVerse and everyone who works hard on the back end of this, organizing, structuring, laying it out. It's interesting because I remember actually being present with Christopher before AI was even a part of the capability for being able to create such things, and the platform was already going then. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he said, Alita, do you really think that the She Summit can really make a big impact? And I was like, buddy, you better do it. And it's super interesting because now since then we've had to continue, and he's had to continue to add additional panel discussions as it continues to grow. So thank you for joining us here today, ladies. I'm going to set forth a little bit of rules of engagement. And I'm going to say that, I'm going to ask that everybody be humble and respectful. Try to be courteous and concise with your thoughts and your explanations and your shares as we go through. Please remember that we are not here to compete. We are here to collaborate. We are here to engage, and we are here to learn from each other. We're here to share our stories with the world and our experiences. And I'm super grateful and honored that I get to be here to moderate you. And we're kicking off the first one. So let's light it up and remember that we are not here to play small. All right, ladies, I'm going to ask each of you as we go around and we start to cover the questions, I'm going to ask that each of you share a little bit of an introduction about yourself, and we'll try to keep it in a few short sentences, but I'm going to ask that you each introduce yourself, talk about like who you are, what it is that you do, why you're here in a few short sentences, if you don't mind, and always lead with that as we go into the first round of questions. And I let everybody respond to what questions you feel as if you're like prepared to answer and that you want to answer. But I do want to try to get through as many questions as possible. So here we go. I guess I'm in charge of the slides. I got it now. What internal barriers prove more limiting for women than external resistance? I'll invite the first person who wants to engage with this. What internal barriers prove more limiting for women than external resistance? Chantal?
Excellent. Shall I introduce myself before I answer, or should I just dive into the answer?
Oh, please introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself and then go.
Great. My name is Chantal Buerta. I am a South African, but I'm also a global slow mad. That is a nomad who travels slowly. I've just spent 6 months in Mauritius. I love my work with women. I love the freedom that it brings me. What I am, or who I am, is I call myself an identity architect. I help people refine how we see ourselves, and in so doing, how we see ourselves changes the results that we get. So I work very closely with women to eradicate shame and all that internal narrative. And that's why I dived into this question. Because the internal barriers that we carry is not just the surface stuff that we talk about. If we look at the feminine for centuries, the feminine has been persecuted. The feminine has been subjugated. I just read a narrative very recently on a woman translator who had translated Homer's Odyssey. And after 400 years, what she's saying is all of the translations from the original Greek has been done through the masculine lens. So the masculine has created their opinion of Homer's Odyssey. But what she did is she came and she just did a straight translation. And Homer's Odyssey reads very differently. Women that were unfaithful suddenly became slaves, and the truth came out. And I think it's time for the truth of the feminine to come out. So the internal barriers, we carry this legacy with us. But in addition to that, we carry so much shame. We carry so much responsibility. We juggle so many roles. And we cannot hope to grow in our careers or in our lives or even in our roles as mothers, sisters, friends until we resolve those things within ourselves, until we remember who we are, reclaim our identity, and step into our power.
Thank you. Powerful first response. Does anybody else want to jump in on this question?
I'd love to jump in. Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Anne Fei. I'm based in Singapore. I lead the School of Leadership. Much like Chantel, I'm all about helping leaders to find their identity, because we've learned from MBA, but the world as it is now requires a different kind of leadership, how you can step up to who you are, and that's going to be so unique for each one. So in terms of internal barriers, I'd like to share a real life situation. So when in my corporate days, when we were looking for successors and the next leader for each business unit, there would obviously be a lot of applicants. But usually what we found was there was a slight difference in gender perspective for women leaders, because women have always been taught to be humble, modest, correct, versus being courageous and reaching for the stars. So the women leaders tend to undersell themselves, or even if they say that, yes, I think I can do it, most likely they definitely can. And because of that underselling, and they wait for 100% readiness before they raise their hands. So sometimes women tend to move a little slower in terms of their career progression and progress in life. So I think that is the internal limit that women have. And if we can break that, I can just imagine a lot of women will come out and shine faster, more brilliantly.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point. That actually, takes me kind of to the thought process around, we're taught as women to look in the mirror and berate ourselves and pick ourselves apart, where little boys are taught to look in the mirror and flex their muscles and talk themselves up, right? And so it starts early on. So for me, I think self-talk, right? The story that we're telling ourselves in our mind really plays a big, impactful part in this. Does anybody else want to jump in on this one? Yeah.
Hi everyone. First of all, I'm Komalika and I'm the founder of this platform called Myths of Technology. It's a place where we discuss the societal impact of technology and AI specifically. A bit about my background, that I majored in philosophy, and since 2021, I've also been working as a marketer in AI and Web3. Now, talking a bit about the internal barriers, Alida, I think you brought it up really well. That it's also the self-talk is also something that we are taught from the very beginning, especially when we look at patriarchal cultures. A lot of times, women are also taught to just believe whatever limits they are being taught. For example, one of the beliefs that we are usually taught as women is that representation alone is enough. Being in a room where decisions are being made is enough. And this is like something that we learn from childhood, and we end up believing that, okay, that's the limit or that's the marker of success. And a lot of times we also forget that just being in the room is not enough. You can do so much more. You're capable of so much more. It's just that because we were never taught to dream bigger, we forget that there's so much that we can do. And this is a process that takes a lot more time for us as women to just navigate through as we grow up, especially when you are a young adult. You're unlearning all that you've been taught, which takes up so much more mental energy rather than being in a position where from the very beginning you are told that, hey, just because you're a man, you can do anything. But if you're a woman, then you have to limit yourself to certain positions or certain rules in the society.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Allison, I think that you wanted to jump in on this one, and then I'm going to move to the next question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my audio is having problems, so I cannot hear what some of the other guests are saying, but hopefully you can hear me okay. I wanted to add about the phenomena of imposter syndrome. I was having a conversation recently with a really successful startup founder who has done really, really well and raised, has an almost unicorn startup. And she said, you get up on the stage as an investor and, you're so confident. She's like, every day I have imposter syndrome. And I just said to her, I was like, look, imposter syndrome is something that we have been taught. I was like, this is a confidence thing. This is a way that we have been told to think and to believe. I was like, I don't have imposter syndrome because I have a right to be in this room. I have a right to be on that stage. I know what I'm talking about. I know this is my domain of expertise, just like your startup is your domain of expertise. You have a right to be here. So why would I feel like I'm an imposter? Those other people who are, and I think that this is perpetuated by the media as well with the whole fake it till you make it. I don't sign up to that ideology. I believe that, you go, you learn, you do, and you stand on that stage and you're not an imposter. You have every right to be there when this is your expertise. And if it's not your expertise, you learn it. If that's something you're interested in, you learn it, you go away, you research, and and that's how you will get forward. And that's how we will break this ideology that's put on us from a very early age that you can't do or fake it till you make it. Just put a smile on your face and walk out. No, acknowledge how you feel. Know your domain, know your expertise, know your areas of weakness, develop in those areas of weakness and hold your space.
I love it. Thank you, Allison, for the ad. Okay, I'm going to ask the ladies who have not yet spoken to lead our next question for us, which is which responsibilities accompanying pioneering leadership beyond personal success? Which responsibilities are accompanying?
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and answer the question since it's fresh in my mind.
Sure.
At the frontier, achievement isn't individual, it's actually more so directional. So the responsibility becomes one of more stewardship, improving the terrain, so others don't have to pay that same entry cost to participate or advance. So this ultimately means naming trade-offs honestly, rather than romanticizing difficulty and making invisible labor visible. And so progress doesn't just depend on the silent sacrifice. It also means refining the path in real time, adjusting the norms, the language, expectations, just so leaders can become more accessible without being diluted, right? So pioneers are also responsible for resisting the urge to turn struggle into identity. And so when hardship becomes a badge of legitimacy, it raises the cost really for entries to follow. So I feel like true pioneering leaders focus less on proving personal capability and more on leaving the system more clearer, more healthier, and a way to navigate than how it did before. So ultimately, in short, kind of like leaving things better than how it was found. I feel like that is a great place for pioneering leadership. My name's Golde Johnson. I am a strategist and advisor, and I focus ideally in my consultancy with women on how they lead, how they operate through uncertainty, and also merging quantitative data with qualitative intuition to build brand architecture and dynamics so they can navigate leadership and have more self-trust as they expand and step into their next phase of business.
Thank you, Golden. Great response. And yes, thank you. I was going to say, I do not want to botch your name, so thank you.
No worries. My name is Lil Oscar Noden. I'm so happy to be here. I am the CEO and founder of Equity Principle Consulting. I am an attorney with over 20 years of experience, as well as an AI governance practitioner. And in my consultancy, I support organizations to architect AI systems that are defensible and inclusive. And in response to this question, when I think about pioneering leadership in the age of AI, I am very concerned and wanting people to step up and step into a space where they are leading from a people first perspective. As organizations embrace AI and embed AI in almost every facet of their workspace in particular, it is going to be critical for leaders to step up and ensure that humanity is always at the center of everything that we do. And to execute on that, that means really ensuring that you're building relationships with your people to ensure that you have an understanding as to what they need in this new world where AI is literally going to be their co-collaborator in the work that they do. And also ensuring that as you communicate and engage with your people, you're keeping at the forefront of those conversations the importance of human dignity and trust and building that within the workplace. And also those leaders need to be accountable for ensuring that they're prioritizing humanity, and by exercising that that muscle as they build that, they're also going to be careful about making sure that AI does not take over the work that they're doing. They don't allow for AI to replace the voice and the work specifically of their people, but they also prioritizing the voice of their people and ensuring that their people continue to remain at the innovative strategic level of the workplace so that they're always keeping their people first.
Thank you. Such an important and super ad. Mentoring, right? Really like passing this and sharing this information becomes vitally important at this juncture in this place and time for sure. Ladies, I'm going to move us to the next question. Which early leadership decisions most strongly determine long-term trajectory? Go ahead.
So when I read that question, I am most concerned about leaders who I mentor young women in their professional careers, and I'm always concerned that sometimes women stay too long in leadership positions, or rather under the leadership of bad managers or managers that are imposing upon them stressors and unrealistic expectations, so much so that it causes the young professional to shrink in their self-worth and their value, and then they begin to question themselves. And so I think it's important for leaders, especially when they're on their leadership journey, young professionals, to be mindful of the environments that they find themselves in, because when they stay too long in bad leadership positions under the management of bad leaders, that impacts their self-view and their opportunities in the long run, and it may have a long-term impact on their career. So they need to be mindful of being in a space that's really nourishing and nurturing them and encouraging them to advance and seek out greater opportunities.
Yes, and not stay where they're harassed or berated or belittled or any of those other things, correct? Does anybody else want to jump in on this one?
I'd like to
jump.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that just to add on that, I think it's really important to, I think Gen Z and hopefully Gen Alpha, they are much better than maybe my generation at knowing what they're not going to put up with within the workplace. And I really applaud those strengthening of boundaries. They have more opportunities. There's different opportunities. The way they envisage the workplace is much better. It's much healthier than the way that I definitely did when I was starting out in my career. But I think that no matter where you are or what generation you want to put yourself into, I think what a leadership qualities that you really should be looking out for and really is going to make difference are people who are inquisitive, that they want to understand, that they're asking why, and they don't just accept that it's like this or it's always been done that way. It's being inquisitive, saying yes to things that push you outside your comfort zone, but within boundaries, so you still feel safe and able to produce. But being able to, just asking those questions, why does this work? Why does that not work? Why can't we do it this way? Why can't we do it that way? And that level of inquisitiveness, call it entrepreneurialism, call it intrapreneurialism, whatever you want to call it, that inquisitiveness is what's going to set you apart. It's that thirst for knowledge, which really can help drive and create and mold the leader of the future. Because I think with AI coming in, it's all about how you form questions, how inquisitive you are, questioning the data that's put in front of you, exploring new ideas. And so the leader of tomorrow will have to come with that mindset already in place.
Thank you. Chantel, I think you wanted in.
Yes, I'd like to offer a slightly contrarian viewpoint. And I don't like this question because I feel that, you know, for anyone in our audience who's watching this and who says, well, I made pretty bad decisions early on in my career, this becomes a limiting question. We are not a product of our past. And that's really the message that I want to impart to women. Wherever you are right now, everything you've done, everything you've been through, every decision has brought you where you are right now, and there is value in that. So that's the first thing. But if I was pushed for an answer for this question, my answer would be, your number one job today is you. Invest in yourself. Before you invest in your career, invest in how you see yourself, your identity, your self-worth, how you feel about yourself, how you show up, because that is the thing that's going to take you the distance. That is the thing that's ultimately going to impact your trajectory. And that starts anywhere.
I love it. Okay, ladies, am I good to move to the next question, or is there somebody who's really itching to answer this one? We're good? Okay. What are the unspoken sacrifices made by women in leadership?
I like to tackle this question.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in the tech industry for 20 years. When I was growing up, I have two older brothers, and my mom said I was more of a son than the other two boys because I ride a bike, I go skydiving, I dive. And I thought that being adventurous was being who I was in character. But until I entered the tech industry, I realized that while I was equally comfortable in my biker gear and in a soft, flowy sundress, being in the tech industry, I saw a lot of women who ditched their sundresses for the corporate armor because of the male domination in the industry. There was a need to be tough, to make tough decisions, to step up to the game. And that sacrifice that was unspoken was ditching our women's softness, our instinct and gut feel for all decisions to be fact-based, ditching our intuition and even our vulnerability. And that shows up not just in terms of losing that identity of who we are as women leaders, but it also shows up in our body because in the stress that we undertake, a lot of women had difficulties in conceiving in the midst of all that stress. So I think that if we were to give an advice to women that are out there, be yourself, because there's beauty in vulnerability. And today when we talk about mental wellness and having a psychological safety for the team, it is that womanly vulnerability, our ability to share stories, to embrace empathy that puts us apart.
Yeah.
As leaders. And it is also our very fact that we have instincts and gut feel and sixth sense that makes a decision more balanced versus than just facts, because the world is changing so much that you sometimes don't have the facts to make clear decisions. So I would say all women, embrace who you are, your qualities of softness, of empathy, of instinct, and all that is very much what makes you a great leader.
Yes, I love that response. I love that you took it into intuition, really trusting in our intuition and our feminine gifts, right? And honoring those and really leading with those, right? It's okay to lead with those. I love it. Anybody else on this one? No? Okay,
I'll add in on that. When women leaders often carry not just formal responsibility, they also carry the emotional, rational, and the cultural load at the same time.
Fair.
And so the additional processing is rarely named. We have to process so much energy, and how much energy is spent at the same time. So there's also this sacrifice of ease when it comes to this question being asked. Women frequently refine themselves in public. We have to focus on adjusting our tone, our presence. We have to look into how we express to maintain legibility and credibility and respect across all systems that were not designed with us in mind. So this is an ongoing self-monitoring in a form of labor that compounds over time. It really just has this load that becomes our identity, and then becomes also an awareness we may have. So it's kind of like an unspoken sacrifice, and it's the compensation that we put into personal identity, where women in leadership, usually when they are acquiring that role, they are more so narrowed down into this perceived order and to be taken seriously, often at the cost of, our softness, our femininity, our complexity. And so the trade-off is not really ambition, it's more so our multi-dimensionality.
Agreed. I think we all are in agreement on this one. And Kamalika, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think another thing which is not really, like, I'm not sure whether to put it in the category of sacrifice or not, but this burden that we carry that, if I fail as a woman, I would be letting all the other women down, because women at the workplace are scrutinized more harshly than men. So anytime you make a mistake, it can be perceived as, women are like that, women tend to make mistakes. So this sort of loss of the individualism, or like your self-identity, and being perceived as, okay, you are a representation of a collective, it can put a lot of added pressure or burden on you. Whereas someone else, or like if you're a man or come from a privileged place, you might not have to even think about all these questions.
Agreed. And how do you work around that? What's been your workaround?
So for me personally, therapy has helped a lot, and it is teaching me how to see myself as a human being rather than, I am a woman, so I have to be, or like the savior's complex that a lot of women are taught from the childhood. Just like learning to be more kind to yourself, just learning how to give yourself grace when you're making mistakes, or even just realizing that if you are a young individual like me, just realizing that, hey, you're still pretty early in your life and you have a lot of time. Just because you do not fit into the timeline that your algorithm might be showing you doesn't mean that you're behind in life or you're failing in life. It is okay to just live your life at your own pace, or live your life the way you want.
I love that, Cher. Thank you. And thank you for your vulnerability. It's going to help impact a lot of people. Which institutional structures resist change during advancement, and how can they be addressed?
I am obsessed with systems. So the structure that resists change, most aren't even written down. They're the unspoken rules about who feels like a leader, how confidence is supposed to sound, whose way of working gets taken more seriously. So these show up in really small, familiar moments. And that looks like who gets interrupted, whose ideas need repeating to land more, and who's trusted with those opportunities before they're proven themselves, right? A lot of people are given things before they have to prove themselves, and others kind of have to prove themselves over time. So these patterns feel normal, but they're rarely questioned, right? And so they're also not fixed by policies, I find. Real change happens when the different leadership styles are seen in working real time, when people watch new approaches succeed. Trust usually builds in that way. And so addressing these structures less about pushing against institution and more about widening what leadership can also look like at the same time as someone else is in leadership can definitely kind of give us a new perspective on what's opening up for us.
Yeah, I love that response. And it's so very true, right? I know myself personally, I've always felt like I've had like a bullseye attached to me, being a female leader, right, throughout corporations and different institutions. And the interesting thing is that I pivoted it so that it put me in a position of rise to the occasion. Right. So I've always striven to be that much greater, that much better, that much stronger, that much wiser, that much more knowledgeable. Right. So in some ways, it has been one of the greatest gifts that I have been given, as well as maybe one of the greatest challenges that I've ever been given as well. And I've been in team leadership and leadership positions the majority of my career for decades now, dating myself. But I do know that that's one of the things that I think most female leaders have faced. And so I think that that's very valid. Anybody else who wants to come in on this one?
May I share something controversial?
Yeah.
I think with the whole focus on gender equality, some of the organizations, they put in quotas in the HR system that there must be X percentage of women leadership, and they do a year-on-year increase on women leadership. Well, in principle, that has pros in the sense that they have to ensure that women are considered in key leadership roles and to justify if they're not. But the cons of it is that sometimes women are pushed into positions when they are not truly qualified.
Yeah.
And then it's being ridiculed that, oh, so now you get pushed up because of the quota rather than your abilities. So I think there are two sides of a coin. So while we have institutional structures like this, I think we need to also have a very equitable way of measuring success and really putting in the performance indicators and have more representation of women in the boardroom.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I don't think it's just like the requirement for female leaders, though, right? Sometimes there's just prerequisites and people are placed in positions that are not qualified, right? It happens throughout institutional structures across the board all of the time, both male and female, I would say, from my experience. Anybody else who wants to jump in on this one, but very valid point, Annie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on something that you were saying earlier about, when you have a bullseye on your back and you're working so much harder and you're proving everyone wrong. The challenge that comes with that, and I talk from personal experience, having been in similar situations, is then you start to form the queen bee bias, where you hold other people in the organization to the same standards of hard work and dedication and focus that you yourself are putting in to prove yourself. And then when they maybe are not as focused or are not putting in as much dedication as you would maybe do if it was you become very disappointed in them and can actually can turn negative for their career. So the queen bee bias is something that's really, really real. And it's something which we really need to be talking more about, but in a positive way, in a way, ultimately we want to be in a place where it doesn't exist, where women don't have to work harder, longer hours, be more dedicated, push themselves more to get those positions and to deliver in those positions and to be seen to be delivering, even though they are in those positions, but that it just comes naturally, because sometimes inadvertently, with a bit of unconscious bias in there, we can hold people to the same level that we're doing ourselves and inadvertently damage their careers.
Yeah, I think that that's also very valid, right? The whole target aspect too, I think, comes from, I'm a business consultant. So when I go into organizations, it's my job to create impact and to create change. And usually I'm not called in unless something is going very wrong. So, from that aspect of things, I'm not necessarily always liked. And so I think that's important to understand too, is that sometimes being a leader is not a popularity contest, right? I think Steve Jobs is the one who said, if you want to be liked by everyone, then sell ice cream, don't be a leader, right? So some of it comes along with the turf. Does anybody else want to add value to this one? We're going to move to the next one. We're making record time here, ladies. I feel like this is the farthest I've gotten in a panel, so good job. Are there moments that can permanently alter leadership confidence for women? Great question. Anyone?
I would say the moment is when judgment wasn't put as a top priority, when self-trust wasn't put as a top priority. That can permanently compound moving forward in that confidence. Many times women, they kind of seek external validation before that internal validation of what they know to be true. I call this a qualitative intuition. We kind of have this GPS that already knows things. However, we don't want to be seen as crazy, or we want to get that quant data to make sure that, you know, we can actually show and express the truth and validity in things. However, that is our superpower, that we can see beyond the data, we can see beyond the moment, and the moment we decide to go against that judgment and go a different route based off of external team members, based off of however someone else is going to think, that's when it can permanently erode your confidence. When I do work with women one-on-one, I notice that's the pattern that I see, is the moment they knew something, it didn't happen, and that pattern continued over time, and that created the outcomes of self-trust, lack of self-trust. And then it kind of just, you know, erodes everything else of who we are and our abilities and gifts as a whole.
Yeah, I love that response. The self-trust factor is huge, right? Learning to trust in ourselves and our feelings and our intuition, all of those things. We lead very differently. And it's important to honor that and to honor ourselves with that. I would say also don't break your own internal integrity, your morals, your values, your ethics. It can be very challenging, right? There can be moments for women in particular where we have to stand our ground, and it's a pivotal, like sometimes it's, is this going to cost me my next paycheck type situation? And I will always encourage to stay strong. It's always worth it. And it's always worked out for me in the long run with it. So anybody else on this one?
Yes, I would also add situations of women finding themselves either in a harassing situation or discrimination situation, or even situations where it's a perpetuation of gaslighting, where they then begin to question themselves, their value, and then really the work that they're doing. That can have a detrimental impact on a leader and her ability to show up in her strength and her confidence, because those things really get at the core of who she is. And I've unfortunately seen situations like that where it has significantly impacted a woman's ability to really do the job, just because it's just a significant situation that can truly impact her as an identity, as a human.
Yeah, so much truth there.
I'd like to also just add, you know, semantics again. Nothing can permanently alter our confidence. If it permanently alters our confidence, we've chosen to allow it to permanently alter, and therefore we're operating from a victim consciousness. Everything is reversible, everything is changeable. That's the beauty of identity. It's always fluctuating, and we choose who we want to be and how we want to show up. But to honor the question, I think I'd also like to throw in something that I say quite often. I don't stand for equality. And I think in this women's leadership and she empowerment movement, we as women have fought so hard for equality, for a level playing field, for a seat at the table, for space in that room. And we're missing the point. I don't want equality. What I want is to celebrate our diversity. But what I want is for us to be able to come together, for the masculine and the feminine, to be able to come together as dual as we are and unite in unity, leveraging our strengths and our weaknesses. Each of us carry masculine and feminine, but it's about honoring the differences and releasing or setting free, empowering those differences instead of using them to divide us. And I think this has done a lot of damage to the movement, as it were, setting us as antagonists across the table from one another, where in actual fact we are complementary, and we need to remember this. When we work together, we can create remarkable things.
Agreed. And before we close, I think Kamalika, you wanted to add in on this one as well.
Yeah, it's considering that we're also living in the age of AI. In the earlier times, people would find themselves in the situations where the idea would be appropriated without getting acknowledged, which means that you would put an idea across, but you would not be acknowledged for it. But when someone else says the same idea, they would be acknowledged for it and they would be given the credit for it. And now, on top of that, now we also have AI, where as a woman or as someone who might be early in their career, you might give out ideas, you might say things, and you might find yourself in a situation where your idea is not acknowledged. But if that same idea comes from someone else or from ChatGPT, that would be considered as the word of the God or the word of the Bible. So in those situations, it's a very important, and especially now more than ever, that you get authorship for your ideas, you get credit for your own ideas, and you do not let such very small little issues that we usually just let slide by.
Agreed. Ladies, I believe that that's a wrap. I think we're to the end of our panel discussion. I value and appreciate all of your input and your foresight and your even opposing thought processes that got thrown into the equation. I think all of it is vitally important to consider as female leaders in the world. And I also love your value add about it's not about the masculine or the feminine or overpowering either direction. More importantly, it's about how do we show up and work together in unison. I think that that's great. So anybody else want to add anything else? If not, I think that we had a powerful and a positive gather, and I'm greatly appreciative that you all showed up and had the presentation that you did today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having us. I would actually say one last thing.
Yes.
Ladies, understand the environment you're in, observe first, and then really know who you are and the values you have in order to navigate the terrain you're in. Understand the environment you're in first. Be observative and be open, and also know who are your allies and who you need to look out for, because the world is real. We need to be aware of that. But other than that, you are powerful. You can make choices that align with the outcomes you want to create and step into that at any time you want. And so thank you so much, GatherVerse, for having us, and as well as Ms. Bailey for hosting us.
Thank you.